Why was everyone staring at her boots? That was Olivia Mitchell's first thought as she stepped out of the battered pickup and into the cool morning air of the NATO training yard. The place smelled of metal and sweat, a cocktail of ambition and fear that clung to every concrete wall. Rows of recruits lined up in neat formations, each one standing a little taller than necessary, trying to look unbreakable. And then there was her, small, quiet, her laces frayed, her jacket too plain for the company she was keeping. Lance Morrison saw her first. He was the kind of man who never had to prove anything because the world had been nodding yes to him since birth. Broad shoulders, mirrored sunglasses, that lazy confidence that fed on attention. He cut through the noise with a bark of laughter. "Get out of my way, logistics," he shouted, shoving past her so hard she staggered. The sound of boots scraping on concrete drew the group's laughter like a starting gun. Olivia steadied herself, adjusted the strap on her worn backpack, and said nothing. Her silence worked like a mirror. Whatever was ugly in them came spilling out. Madison Brooks, the blonde whose ponytail was as sharp as her tone, smirked and gestured toward Olivia's faded t-shirt. "Seriously, who let the janitor in?" The laughter rolled across the yard again. For a moment, the morning sun caught on the brass insignia pinned to a dozen uniforms, turning arrogance into glitter. Olivia's expression didn't change. She bent, picked up her bag, and walked toward the barracks as though the noise around her belonged to another world entirely. But somewhere in the command tower, a camera tracked her movement. Someone, something, was paying attention. 18 minutes from now, none of them would be laughing. The first day at the academy was always chaos. Orders barked, names called, egos tested. Captain Harrow, the head instructor, paced the yard like a storm front with a voice built to shake concrete. When his shadow fell over Olivia, the world seemed to pause. "You," he barked, pointing a finger that could have crushed granite. "What's your deal? Supply crew get lost." She met his eyes without flinching. "Cadet Mitchell, sir." Harrow studied her for a heartbeat too long, then snorted. "Fine, don't slow us down." The others grinned, already assigning her a place in their unspoken hierarchy, the bottom. That evening the mess hall hummed with youthful arrogance. The air was thick with chatter, stories of past victories, exaggerated and overlapping. Olivia carried her tray to the corner, alone. She ate in silence, unbothered, until a loud clatter dropped beside her. Derek Chen, lean and restless, leaned forward, his voice loud enough for the whole room. "Hey, lost girl, this ain't a soup kitchen. You sure you're not here to wash dishes?" The laughter came again, predictable as thunder after lightning. Olivia lifted her fork, took a bite, and chewed slowly. "I'm eating," she said. Derek's smirk deepened. "Yeah, well, eat faster. You're taking up space real soldiers need." He flicked her tray, mashed potatoes splattered across her shirt. Phones came out, the glow of cameras turning cruelty into content. She wiped the mess clean with a napkin, movements calm, deliberate, surgical. Then she took another bite. That silence, unapologetic, unflinching, made the laughter falter. Captain Harrow had said the weak would separate the wheat from the chaff. What he hadn't known was that some things, steel, tempered by fire, couldn't be separated at all. The next morning's physical trial began before sunrise. Push-ups until arms shook, sprints until lungs burned. Mud and sweat formed a new uniform. Olivia moved like she'd done this 1,000 times before, steady, efficient. Her shoelaces came loose twice. She tied them each time without complaint. Lance noticed. "Yo, thrift store," he shouted. "Your shoes giving up, or is that just you?" Another ripple of laughter, another silence from her. She stopped, retied, kept going. When Lance jogged past again, he slammed his shoulder into hers. She hit the ground hard, palms in the mud. The laughter came louder. She rose, wiped her hands on her pants, and continued running. Not faster, not slower, just steady. At the end of the course, she was caked in mud but still upright. No excuses, no anger, just breath, rhythm, and focus. During a short break, Madison Brooks strutted over with her entourage, a smile sweet enough to rot teeth. "So, Olivia," she said, pretending casual interest. "Where are you from? Win some kind of contest to be here." Olivia looked up from her granola bar. "Applied." "Cute," Madison said. "But like why? You don't exactly scream elite soldier." Olivia leaned forward just enough to make Madison flinch. "I'm here to train," she said quietly, "not to make you feel better about yourself." That shut her up. The navigation exercise that afternoon was designed to break spirits. A thick forest, fatting light, a map, and a clock. Olivia moved alone, compass steady in her hand. She stopped under an oak to check her coordinates, and that's when Kyle Martinez and his friends found her. "Hey, Dora the Explorer," he called. "You lost or just picking flowers?" His laughter carried through the trees. He snatched the map from her hands, tore it in half, and tossed the pieces into the wind. Olivia's eyes followed the fluttering scraps for a moment. "Hope you know your way back," she said softly and walked on. He froze, unsure whether she just insulted him or forgiven him. But she was already gone, the sound of her boots fatting into the undergrowth. That night during weapons disassembly training, everything changed, just slightly, like the first tremor before an earthquake. Each cadet was handed an M4 carbine and a stopwatch. 2 minutes to take it apart, clean it, and put it back together. Lance went first. 1 minute 43 seconds, pieces rattling like a bag of bolts. Madison scraped by at 1:59, hands trembling. Then Olivia stepped up. She didn't look like she was competing. Her movements were fluid, almost gentle. Pin out, bolt released, parts laid out in a precise grid. Not a second wasted. 52 seconds. When the sergeant checked the timer, he frowned like he didn't trust it. "Mitchell," he said, "where'd you learn that?" She wiped her hands on her pants. "Practice." The screen replayed her performance in slow motion, perfect coordination, not a hint of hesitation. A lieutenant whispered. Her hands didn't shake once. "That's Special Forces steady." Lance scoffed. "So she can clean a gun, big deal." But across the room, Elena Rodriguez, a quiet cadet who'd been watching since day one, slipped Olivia a folded map from her own pack. "You'll need this," she murmured. Olivia nodded. No smile, no words. But for the first time something flickered in her eyes, something human, maybe gratitude. Whispers began that night. Little things. The way she moved. The way her eyes scanned every environment like she was memorizing it. Someone mentioned her gear, custom modified, not standard issue. Someone else swore they'd seen her handwriting in a classified format used only by special operations. No one believed it, of course. Myths were easier to mock than to respect. By the third day, even the quartermaster joined the fun. Gibbs, a crusty veteran with a belly like a sandbag, tossed her a vest 2 sizes too big. "What's this? A hobo convention. We don't got gear for civilians, sweetheart." The room laughed. She caught the vest, said nothing, and walked out. Outside, away from eyes, she knotted the straps with practiced efficiency until it fit perfectly. When she stepped back into formation, not a thread hung loose. The terrain run came next, 10 miles of mud, rocks, and pride. Madison muttered behind her the whole time. "Pick it up, charity case. You're dragging us down." At mile 6, Madison accidentally clipped Olivia's elbow. Olivia stumbled, rolled, twisted her ankle. Captain Harrow's voice thundered across the field. "Mitchell, broke formation. Squad loses points." No one defended her. Lance glared. "Nice one, Mitchell, real team player." She said nothing, just limped back into formation. When the run ended, Harrow barked, 5 extra laps. She ran them, all of them, alone. No one offered water. Madison tossed an empty bottle at her feet. "Hydrate with air." Olivia crushed it in her hand and dropped it in the bin. That night the training ground turned into chaos. A simulated combat drill under strobing flares, smoke, and shouted orders. Olivia worked alone, setting up a rope perimeter while others fumbled. Marcus Webb, built like a bulldozer, decided she made easy prey. He yanked her rope free. "Oops, guess you're not cut out for this." She knelt, picked it up, started over. He kicked dirt over her hands. "Keep trying, princess." She looked up, eyes sharp enough to cut steel. "You done?" For a moment, even the explosion seemed to pause. Marcus blinked and backed off, pretending it was a joke. When the scores came in, his perimeter had collapsed. Hers was flawless. Alina noticed. She didn't say anything, just smiled, small and secret. Later in the barracks, Olivia sat on her bunk and pulled out a worn photograph. A younger version of herself stood beside a man whose face was blurred, body rigid, posture unmistakably military. Her thumb brushed the image, an echo of another life, and then the photo disappeared back into her pack as footsteps approached. Lance walked by, towel slung over his shoulder. "Better sleep tight, Mitchell," he said. "Tomorrow's the shooting range. Try not to embarrass yourself again." She lay back on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling. The lights went out. Her breathing slowed, steady as a heartbeat, but her eyes stayed open. Somewhere in the dark, memories whispered. A voice from another life, gravel rough, calm as death itself. "Stay unseen until you're ready to be remembered." Dawn came too soon. The air at the firing range was brittle with anticipation. 5 shots, 400 meters. Fail once, you're out. Madison missed 2. Lance missed 1. The air filled with nervous energy and cheap bravado. Then Olivia stepped forward. She didn't check the wind, didn't adjust the scope, just exhaled. 5 shots, 5 perfect holes, dead center. No hesitation, no wasted motion. The range officer blinked. Perfect score. Somewhere behind him, a colonel who'd been watching whispered, "Who trained her?" No one answered, no one could. But the question hung there, heavy as prophecy. Because Olivia Mitchell, quiet, invisible Olivia, wasn't here to prove herself. She was here to remember who she used to be. And soon, everyone else would remember too. Why didn't she celebrate? 5 perfect shots. The kind of marksmanship that made instructors stop mid-sentence. The kind of performance that ended military careers or built legends. But Olivia Mitchell didn't smile. She didn't even look at the target. She simply cleared her weapon, locked the bolt, and stepped back into line as if nothing had happened. Madison Brooks couldn't handle the silence. "Lucky shots," she muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. "Even a broken clock's right twice a day." No one laughed, not this time. The colonel, an older man with gray hair and a 1,000-yard stare, hadn't moved for nearly a full minute. He just watched her, eyes tracing the shape of a question he couldn't yet ask. Finally, he turned to the range officer. "Check her rifle." The officer hesitated but obeyed. When he examined the sight alignment, his face drained of color. "Sir, the scope's off." "How far?" 2 millimeters right, 1 high. Should have thrown her 5 shots completely wide. The colonel's eyes flicked back to Olivia. She was standing perfectly still, her hands clasped behind her back, expression unreadable. "That's not luck," he murmured. "That's muscle memory." The words rippled through the line like an electric current. But Olivia's calm remained intact, measured, restrained, almost unnatural. The others stared at her differently now. Not admiration, not yet, something else. Fear, maybe. The quiet, confused kind that doesn't know where to go. That night the mess hall was louder than usual, forced laughter, anxious chatter. Soldiers joke loudest when they're afraid. Olivia sat alone again, the way she always did, sipping water while her tray sat empty. Jenna Walsh, tall and sharp-tongued, spotted her and smirked. "No dinner again, Mitchell," she said, dragging out the words for effect. "Can't have you starving, here." She dropped half an apple onto Olivia's tray. "You need your strength for whatever it is you do." The table behind her erupted in laughter. Phones lifted again. They wanted another clip, another humiliation. Olivia looked at the apple, then up at Jenna. Thanks. She picked it up, took a slow bite, chewed, swallowed, then another. The laughter faltered. By the time she finished the core and set it down, the room had gone strangely quiet. No reaction, no comeback, just calm defiance in the form of silence. She stood, brushed past Jenna, and walked away. The contact of her shoulder against Jenna's was light, barely a touch, but it made the taller woman flinch. For the first time, no one laughed. The next morning dawned gray and humid, combat simulation day. The instructors called it close quarters reality. No weapons, no mercy. One-on-one sparring, chosen at random, or so they claimed. But everyone knew Captain Harrow had been waiting for this. The list went up on the board, and when Lance Morrison saw his name beside hers, his grin spread slow and wide. Oh, this is gonna be fun. The others crowded the mats, eyes gleaming with that brutal curiosity unique to people who have never truly suffered. Lance was everything the program celebrated, tall, fast, decorated from earlier competitions. He rolled his shoulders like a boxer entering the ring. Olivia just stood there, small, still, unarmed. Ready, Harrow barked. Lance didn't wait for the whistle, he charged. His hands hit her collar, slamming her back against the padded wall. The impact tore her shirt from the shoulder down, fabric ripping like paper. The crowd roared. Madison's phone was already up. Look at that, she's got tattoos too. What is this, biker boot camp? But then something shifted. Lance leaned in close, grinning like a predator. This isn't daycare, Mitchell. Time to go home. Olivia's eyes met his, calm, patient, unshaken. Let go, she said softly. He laughed, tightening his grip. Or what? The torn fabric slipped lower. And that's when the laughter died. Across her shoulder blade, black ink coiled into a shape that didn't belong in a place like this. A viper, its body wrapped around a shattered human skull, fangs dripping blood. The design was so intricate it almost seemed alive under the fluorescent light. Lance's hands went slack. Madison's phone slipped from her grasp, clattering to the floor. Even Captain Harrow froze mid-step. From the edge of the yard, Colonel James Patterson, who had been watching the exercise, took a slow step forward. His weathered face had gone completely pale. He stopped 10 feet away, his voice shaking. Who gave you the right to wear that mark? The air turned electric. No one moved, no one spoke. Olivia stood straight, her expression unchanging. I didn't ask for it, she said. It was given to me by Ghost Viper. The name hit like a detonation. For a long moment, the only sound was the wind scraping across the training yard. Then Patterson straightened abruptly, his hand rising in a crisp salute. Every cadet watched in disbelief as the base commander, the same man who'd once reduced grown soldiers to tears, stood at attention before the quiet woman they'd spent days mocking. No one bears that tattoo unless they're his final student, Patterson said. His only student. Lance stumbled back, color draining from his face. Ghost Viper, the name every soldier knew but none dared speak. The elite operative who'd vanished years ago, taking his secret unit with him into the dark. The man said to have trained assassins that didn't officially exist. And now his mark was right here, inked across the back of the woman they'd called janitor. Madison whispered, "That's impossible." But the word impossible had already lost meaning. Colonel Patterson lowered his salute and exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. Cadet Mitchell, he said formally, on behalf of this facility, welcome back. Olivia inclined her head once. Thank you, sir. She turned, gently removing Lance's hands from her torn shirt. He didn't resist, couldn't. The silence felt heavier than gunfire. But pride is a stubborn thing. Bullshit, Lance spat. His voice cracked, desperation bleeding through arrogance. I don't care what ink you've got, prove it. Prove you're what you say you are. Patterson's voice was sharp. Son, that's enough. No, Lance roared. I'm not bowing to some myth. He dropped into a fighting stance. Come on, Mitchell, show me. Olivia regarded him for a long, steady moment. The calm that came over her wasn't anger. It was something colder. If that's what you want, she said quietly. The whistle never blew. Lance lunged. He swung a right hook meant to end the match in one hit. Olivia didn't move until the last second, turning just enough to let it brush past. He followed with a left, then a combination of heavy strikes. She slipped between them like smoke, her movements minimal, precise, almost lazy. Hit me already, he shouted, sweating wild. She didn't, she waited. He grew sloppy, his breathing grew ragged. And when his arm overextended just slightly, she stepped in. One motion, seamless, beautiful in its efficiency. Her arm slid around his neck, a brief struggle, a breath, then stillness. 8 seconds later, Lance Morrison hit the mat unconscious. The entire yard went silent. Captain Harrow walked forward, stared at the fallen man, then turned to Olivia. His voice was quieter than anyone had ever heard it. Effective immediately, he said. Cadet Mitchell is an honorary instructor. You will learn from her, you will respect her, and you will follow her orders as you would mine. No one spoke, no one dared. Olivia picked up her torn shirt, pulled it across her shoulder, and walked toward the barracks. The crowd parted like a tide. By evening, every person on base knew, from the cooks to the colonels. The story spread faster than any rumor in memory. The janitor girl was Ghost Viper's last apprentice. The forgotten nobody was a legend's heir. And now, everyone watched her like she was a loaded weapon left on the table. Her first test as an instructor came the next morning during the urban combat simulation. A controlled environment, concrete corridors, mock hostiles, drone surveillance overhead. Olivia's squad included Madison, a cruel twist of fate or poetic justice. The exercise began. Olivia moved like she'd done it 1,000 times, silent hand signals, clean angles, calculated cover. But Madison refused to follow, her pride too swollen to obey. She broke formation, triggered a tripwire. An alarm screamed across the range, ending the run in seconds. Captain Harrow stormed out from the control tent, face red with fury. Mitchell, your team's a disaster. Madison smirked. Told you she's useless. Tattoo doesn't make you a leader. Olivia stood still. Sir, she said evenly. I gave the hand signal to stop. Brooks ignored it. Harrow turned to Madison. That true? I didn't see any signal. She lied easily, smirking again. The tension thickened. For a moment, it looked like Olivia would take the blame. Then a voice from the observation tent cut through. Sir, drone footage ready. They played it. The screen showed everything. Olivia's clear, deliberate hand signal. Madison's deliberate defiance. Harrow's jaw tightened. 50 points deducted from Squad Delta. Brooks, latrine duty for a week. The laughter that usually followed Madison's words turned against her. Olivia didn't gloat, she simply nodded. Ready for next round, sir. And that, more than any victory, was what made them respect her. Over the next days, the entire base began to shift. Captain Harrow, once dismissive, now paused during briefings to ask for her input. Sergeants who'd sneered began taking notes when she spoke. They'd seen enough to understand. This wasn't a story about gender or rank. It was about depth, the kind of strength that doesn't announce itself until it's needed most. Late one afternoon, a young officer approached her during downtime. He was nervous, clutching a clipboard. Ma'am, there's someone here to see you. Who? He swallowed. I can't say, ma'am. He's waiting at the main gate. The walk there felt heavier than any drill. Standing by the entrance was a man in civilian clothes, dark jeans, black tactical jacket, hair gray at the temples. His presence radiated quiet authority. Colonel Patterson stood nearby, unusually formal. "Mitchell," he said, clearing his throat, "this is General Thomas Reed." The name hung in the air. Olivia stopped a few feet away. Something softened in her eyes for the first time. "You didn't have to come," she said quietly. Reed tilted his head, that faint half-smile cutting through years of silence. "Yeah," he said, "I did." The cadets gathered behind the fence, whispering. Patterson turned to them, his voice carrying like a bell. "This is General Thomas Reed, Olivia's husband." Gasps rippled through the ranks. Reed rested a hand on her shoulder, the same shoulder that bore the Viper mark. "Let's go home," he said softly. She nodded. They turned toward the old pickup truck. When the engine roared to life and rolled down the dusty road, the entire base stood in silence. No one saluted, no one spoke. They just watched her go, like watching a ghost fade back into legend. But legends never stay gone. And somewhere deep in the classified channels of military command, a single word began flashing across encrypted servers. Viper, a code name long buried. And the woman everyone once mocked was about to be called back to finish what her teacher started. Why did the phone ring again? For months, silence had been her closest friend. The world outside their cabin whispered with wind through pine and the hum of unseen satellites far above. General Thomas Reed had learned to breathe in rhythm with that quiet. Olivia Mitchell had learned to hide inside it. Until the phone rang. A small black device sat buried beneath layers of everyday normalcy, beneath folded laundry, behind picture frames of a life that never quite felt real. When it vibrated, the sound cut through the house like a blade. Reed froze mid-stride. No one should have that number. Olivia's eyes met his. Calm, centered, but deep inside something shifted, like old machinery sparking back to life after years of stillness. She lifted the phone, pressed it to her ear. A single voice on the other end. Male, low, professional. "Code Phoenix." Her heartbeat slowed instead of quickening. Phoenix, the operation that had supposedly killed Ghost Viper himself. The final mission, the grave that never had a body. "I thought Phoenix was terminated," she said. "So did we," the voice replied. "But new intel says otherwise. The target survived, and he knows about you." The line went dead. Reed exhaled. "They're pulling you back in." Olivia set the phone down gently as if it were fragile glass. "No," she said softly. "They're not pulling me. I'm walking in." 2 days later, the mountains swallowed them whole. The facility sat camouflaged beneath acres of forest, concrete bunkers buried like bones beneath the earth. No signs, no insignia, just an access gate guarded by silence and suspicion. Reed parked the truck, his eyes sweeping the tree line. "You sure you want this?" Olivia tightened her gloves. "One has nothing to do with it." Inside, corridors buzzed with fluorescent light and quiet urgency. Men and women in unmarked uniforms moved like ghosts through the sterile halls. No one spoke above a whisper. A woman in a gray suit met them at the entrance. "Agent Mitchell," she said formally, "welcome back to active status." "Back implies I ever left." That earned the faintest smirk. "This way." They walked through security checkpoints that scanned more than weapons, thermal patterns, micro-expressions, old secrets. Every lock recognized her. Every camera followed her like a returning storm. The briefing room smelled of coffee and fear. On the wall, a holographic map rotated slowly, Eastern Europe flickering in blue light. A voice from the head of the table. "3 of our deep-cover operatives vanished. Before they went dark, they transmitted one word: Viper." The room held its breath. Reed leaned forward. "You're sure it's not a mimic signal?" "No, sir. The encryption matches Ghost Viper's original frequency. Whoever's out there, they know the old codes." All eyes turned to Olivia. She stood perfectly still, hands clasped behind her back. "You think he's alive?" The director nodded. We think someone wants you to believe he is. Later, in the quiet of the debriefing lounge, Reed found her staring at a wall of old mission photos, grainy snapshots of men and women who'd never officially existed. "You trained under him," he said softly. "If he's alive, you'll know." Olivia didn't look away from the photos. "That's what scares me." He touched her shoulder. "You don't have to do this alone." She gave a small, rueful smile. "I never did." The flight to Prague was uneventful, which only made it worse. Peace before a storm always carried a certain weight. From the window, the city spread like a patchwork of memories, ancient streets hiding modern sins. The agency had arranged a safe house, a cramped apartment above a bakery that smelled of burnt sugar and secrets. She unpacked with surgical precision. Weapons, communication rigs, false IDs, a folded piece of cloth bearing the Viper emblem. Reed watched her from the doorway. "You kept that." Olivia ran a finger over the faded ink. "It's a reminder." "Of what?" "That monsters can bleed." Night fell like an ambush. Her first contact arrived just past midnight. A knock too short, one long. She opened the door without hesitation. Agent Sarah Chen stood there, younger than Olivia by at least a decade, but with the same hard focus in her eyes. "Mitchell," she said, stepping in quickly. "We've got movement." Chen dropped a folder on the table. Inside were grainy surveillance photos. Men in military-grade armor, unmarked, moving crates through an abandoned railway depot. "Where?" Olivia asked. "Outside Brno. Same coordinates as the last Ghost Viper training site before Phoenix." Reed joined them, scanning the images. "Could be a false flag." Chen shook her head. "The intel came through encrypted on your old protocol." Olivia's hand froze halfway to the photo. "My protocol was buried." Someone dug it up. They reached the depot before dawn. The air was wet and metallic, the kind of cold that lived in your bones. Olivia crouched behind a crumbling wall, binoculars up. 2 guards north, 1 sniper nest west tower. Pattern repeats every 90 seconds. Chen glanced at her. "How are you doing that without a timer?" Olivia didn't answer. She didn't need to. Years of training had taught her to hear rhythm where others heard chaos. They moved, silent, efficient, shadows within shadows. When the first guard fell, no one heard it. When the second dropped, even the wind paused to listen. Inside, the depot smelled of oil and dust. Crates stacked high, each stamped with a symbol she hadn't seen in years, a coiled viper in faded ink. Her breath caught. Reed noticed. "You okay?" "This isn't his work," she said quietly. "It's someone copying it." "Why?" "To draw me out." And then she saw it, scrawled on the wall in black marker, barely legible. "Welcome home." By the time backup arrived, the place was empty. Whoever had set the trap had planned the timing perfectly. On the flight back, Chen sat across from her, studying her expression. "You think it's personal." "It always was," Olivia said. "Ghost Viper didn't train soldiers. He trained reflections. Every lesson, every scar was designed to make you see yourself the way he did, useful, disposable, dangerous. And you survived that. Surviving isn't the same as escaping." Back at headquarters, the analysts were already arguing over data. Olivia tuned them out, focusing instead on a single image on the screen, grainy footage of a man's silhouette walking away from the depot. The gait was familiar, too familiar. Reed noticed her tension. "You think it's him?" She didn't answer immediately. "If it is, then the world's about to remember why they buried his name." That night, alone in her quarters, she opened the encrypted file she'd sworn never to touch again. Ghost Viper's final training dossier. His voice filled the small room, recorded years ago. "You don't become invisible by hiding. You do it by being seen and forgotten." She closed her eyes, the words wrapping around her like old armor. When she opened them again, her decision was made. At dawn, she walked into the command room, where the director and Reed were waiting. "I'm going after him," she said simply. The director frowned. "You don't even know he's alive." "Then I'll find out." "Mitchell, this isn't your mission anymore." She met his gaze. "It's always been my mission." Reed stepped forward. "Then I'm coming with you." She shook her head. "You can't, you're still traceable, they'll expect you." "Olivia." She touched his hand. "I need you to be the light on the hill. I'll call when the shadows are too deep." He exhaled through clenched teeth but didn't argue further. He knew better than anyone. When Olivia Mitchell made a decision, gravity itself seemed to bend around it. Her new team assembled quietly. Chen, 2 local operatives, 1 tech specialist. They called themselves Echo Unit, though none of them really believed names mattered anymore. Their next lead took them east, to a border town that had changed hands too many times to remember which flag it flew under. Intelligence suggested a shipment connected to the missing agents had passed through there. But the first thing Olivia noticed wasn't the crates or the soldiers. It was the graffiti sprayed across a half-collapsed wall. A viper coiled around a skull. And beneath it 3 words. "The lesson continues." Chen's hand went to her weapon. "He's taunting you." Olivia stared at the symbol. "No," she said, "he's teaching." They infiltrated the facility under cover of storm. Rain lashed at broken windows, thunder masking footsteps. Inside, shadows flickered between strobe flashes of lightning. A voice echoed through the old intercom, distorted but unmistakable. "Mitchell." Her blood went cold. "Did you think the world would let you stay clean?" the voice asked. "You can't bury what you were made for." Reed's voice whispered through her earpiece from the remote feed. "Liv, pull back, it's a trap." She smiled faintly. "I know." Because she understood the lesson now. The one ghost viper had buried in every strike, every silence. You couldn't kill what people refused to see. You could only become it again. The team moved deeper. Hallways narrowed, walls closing in like ribs around a heart. And there, at the center of the building, stood a chair. A simple metal chair. On it lay a file, her file. Inside, photographs from the boot camp, the barracks, the shooting range. Even the image of Colonel Patterson saluting her. Chen whispered, horrified, "They were watching us." Olivia felt something colder than fear settle inside her. They always were. She tore the file in half. "Burn it." As the flames curled the paper to ash, alarms began to scream. Gunfire ripped through the building. The team returned fire, retreating toward the extraction point. Olivia covered their flank, her shots precise, deliberate. A figure moved in the smoke, tall, familiar, impossible. She hesitated. The man stepped forward, face half hidden beneath a hood. For a heartbeat, she saw the impossible, the same stance, the same eyes. Ghost Viper. Then the smoke swallowed him again. By the time she reached the corridor, he was gone. On the flight back, Chen sat silent for a long time before asking, "What if he's not the same man anymore?" Olivia looked out at the endless dark below. "Then I'll have to be." Reed met them at the airfield. He didn't ask what she'd seen. He could read it in her eyes. "He's alive," he said quietly. "Something's alive," she answered. "Whether it's him or the ghost of what he made, I don't know yet." Reed placed a hand over hers. "Whatever it is, we end it together." She nodded, but part of her knew together wouldn't last. Not in this world. Not with the kind of enemies that trained you to kill silence itself. Later, in the debriefing chamber, she wrote a single sentence in her field journal before closing it again. "Sometimes the past doesn't hunt you to destroy you. It hunts to remind you what you're still capable of." She closed her eyes. In the distance, thunder rolled again. Ghost Viper was out there. And Olivia Mitchell, the woman everyone once underestimated, was ready to meet him halfway. Why did she hesitate? In her world, hesitation got people killed. It wasn't fear that froze her in that smoke-filled corridor. It was memory. For a second, less than a heartbeat, the face in the mist wasn't Ghost Viper. It was hers, the version of herself that had believed she could bury everything she'd been trained to do. The woman who'd stood in that boot camp yard, pretending to be small. And now that version was gone. The safe house was cold when they returned. Chen patched a graze on her shoulder in silence while Reed reviewed footage on a portable monitor. Frame by frame, the shadowed figure's movements replayed in flickering grayscale. Same gait, Reed said quietly. Same height, same posture. Olivia stared at the screen, her expression unreadable, but not the same eyes. Reed looked at her. You saw them. She nodded once, and they weren't his. Chen frowned. Then who are we chasing? Olivia's voice dropped to a whisper. Someone trained by him, or worse, trained after me. Morning came gray and cold. The team had slept in shifts, though Olivia never really slept. She sat by the window, eyes fixed on the horizon as the first hints of dawn stretched over the rooftops. She'd been taught that emotion was a weakness, that sentiment dulled precision. But now, watching the city wake up, she realized Ghost Viper hadn't been wrong about everything. Emotion didn't dull you. It reminded you why you fought. When Reed stirred behind her, she spoke without turning. They're copying his tactics, Tom, down to the smallest detail. Whoever this is, they know everything about how we trained. Reed rubbed his eyes, half awake. That narrows it down to about 20 ghosts the government pretends don't exist. No, she said, just one. Later that morning, a call came through an encrypted channel. Agent Chen listened, her face tightening with each word. When she ended the transmission, she looked at Olivia. They hit a weapons convoy in Warsaw. 3 guards dead. They left a message. What kind of message? Chen slid a photo across the table. Spray painted on the side of a burning transport truck. A coiled viper, fangs open. Beneath it, written in blood-red paint, one word, Echo. Reed looked up sharply. That's your team's name. Olivia felt her stomach drop. They're not hunting Ghost Viper, she said slowly. They're hunting me. The next 48 hours were a blur of movement. Flights booked under false names, safe houses abandoned, routes changed every 3 hours. The pattern was too precise to be random. Their hunters were always one step behind. Chen's voice trembled for the first time. How are they tracking us? We've scrubbed every signal. Olivia didn't answer. She walked to her pack, opened a hidden compartment, and pulled out a thin black chip. It pulsed faintly with a red light. They're not tracking us, she said, holding it up. They're tracking me. Reed stared. When did? Probably during the depot mission, embedded in my gear. Without hesitation, she dropped the chip to the floor and crushed it under her boot. The light went out. So did the last bit of peace they had left. That night, Olivia sat alone outside the safe house, the chill biting through her jacket. The stars overhead were cold, indifferent witnesses. Reed stepped out quietly, hands in his pockets. You've gone quiet. Thinking. About what? She hesitated. About how he used to say the world doesn't change, only the masks it wears. Reed sat beside her. You think this new Viper's wearing his mask? She nodded, and using it to pull others in. Ghost Viper built killers who thought they were saviors. Someone's reviving that ideology. He sighed, the sound heavy. You realize what that means, don't you? If this keeps spreading, there'll be more like you. She looked at him. Then I'll stop them before that happens. The mission brief came through at 300 hours. A signal traced to a decommissioned listening post near the Belarusian border. Old Soviet ruins, perfect for ghosts. The drive there was silent. Rain streaked across the windshield in long, rhythmic patterns. Chen dozed against the window. Reed navigated, the glow of the dashboard painting his face in pale light. Olivia's mind drifted back to the boot camp, to laughter, to mud, to the moment the commander saluted her. That was the last time she'd felt truly seen, and she hadn't known how much she'd needed it until now. The listening post loomed out of the fog like a scar on the earth. They entered through a collapsed side wall, flashlights cutting through the damp air. Old radio equipment littered the floors, rusted dials, wires like veins, and scrawled across the central console in chalk the same 3 words: "The lesson continues." Chen whispered, "They're taunting you again." "No," Olivia said softly, "they're escalating." She knelt scanning the floor, dust disturbed, footprints deliberate. "They want us to follow," she murmured. Reed frowned, "Then we don't." She shook her head. "If I don't, someone else will, someone unprepared." A faint click echoed from the shadows. "Down," she hissed. The explosion tore through the corridor. Dust and fire erupted, hurling them backward. When the smoke cleared, the roof was half gone. Reed was bleeding from the temple. Chen coughed, waving away dust. "Booby trap," Olivia said, voice calm despite the ringing in her ears. "Triggered remotely. He knew we were coming." "How?" Reed rasped. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The realization in her eyes said it all. Someone inside their circle was feeding intel. They retreated to a secondary safe house across the border, deep in a forest where even GPS signals vanished. Reed's wound was minor, but Olivia's patience was. She pulled Chen aside. "Who else had access to our movements?" "No one outside command." "Then check inside command." Chen's jaw tightened. "You think it's one of ours?" "I think Ghost Viper taught us all one thing," Olivia said. "Trust gets you killed." Hours later, a secure message flashed on Chen's tablet. She frowned. "It's from headquarters, Priority Alpha." Reed took the device. The message was brief. "Stand down. Operation Phoenix is now under direct command of Viper Initiative. All field agents report to Prague for reassignment." Olivia's blood ran cold. Viper Initiative doesn't exist. Reed looked at her. "It does now." The next day they arrived at a repurposed intelligence hub in Prague's old district. The moment they entered, Olivia knew something was wrong. Too quiet, too clean. A man in a tailored suit met them at the door. "Agent Mitchell," he said smoothly. "General Reed, Agent Chen, welcome." His accent was European, French maybe. His smile never reached his eyes. "We've been expecting you." Olivia tilted her head slightly. "And you are?" "Director Marcel, acting commander of the Viper Initiative." "Never heard of you," Reed said flatly. "Few have, that's how we survive." They followed him into a glass-walled briefing chamber. Maps glowed across the screens, familiar coordinates, familiar code names. Too familiar. Then Olivia saw it. Footage from the boot camp, her disassembly drill, the fight with Lance, even the moment Colonel Patterson saluted her. She went cold. "Where did you get that footage?" Marcel smiled faintly. "From the NATO archives, and from a very cooperative colonel named Patterson." Reed's fists clenched. "You're running blackmail ops with classified footage." "Not blackmail," Marcel said. "Recruitment. You inspired a movement, Agent Mitchell. The world saw that video, the underdog, the silence, the strength. You've become a symbol. We're simply using that image to motivate new candidates." Olivia's voice hardened. "You're weaponizing it." He smiled wider. "Perception is a weapon, and you wield it better than anyone." That was when she understood. This wasn't Ghost Viper's rebirth. It was his evolution. Someone had taken the myth, the legend of a ghost who built soldiers out of shadows, and turned it into propaganda. They were manufacturing belief. Reed leaned close to her, his voice low. "We need to leave now." Olivia didn't move. "If we do, they'll vanish again." Marcel gestured toward the glass wall, where a row of recruits stood in formation, young, sharp, hungry. Each bore the mark of the viper on their shoulders. This, he said proudly, is the next generation, thanks to you. Olivia's stomach turned. I never gave you permission to use my name. You didn't need to. The world already has. When they left the building, the rain had started again. Cold, unforgiving. Chen was furious. They're building an army in your image. Olivia walked in silence, rain soaking her jacket. No, she said finally. They're building an army against everything I stand for. Reed glanced at her. Then what's the play? She stopped at the edge of the bridge, city lights reflecting off the river below. Her reflection looked back, quiet, small, dangerous. The play, she said softly, is to remind them what happens when the student becomes the teacher. That night she opened a secure line to an old contact, a woman known only as Wraith, a former cyberanalyst for Ghost Viper's unit. Olivia Mitchell, Wraith said, her voice crackling through static. Didn't think I'd hear from you again. I need access to the initiative's internal comms, every terminal, every file. That's national-level intrusion. You planning to start a war? No, Olivia said. I'm planning to end one before it starts. By dawn, the data flood began. Lines of encrypted code streamed across her screen, a digital heartbeat of corruption. Dozens of recruitment videos, propaganda manuals, financial ledgers, all built around her image. At the center of it all, a single classified directive marked in red. Project Serpent authorized by Ghost Viper. Olivia stared at the signature. The handwriting was unmistakable. Chen's voice was barely a whisper. It's him. Reed looked at her. Now what? Olivia closed the laptop. Her face was calm again, steel beneath stillness. Now, she said, we hunt the ghost. That night, the wind screamed through the trees like something alive. Olivia stood outside the safe house, hands resting on the railing. The viper tattoo on her back burned beneath her shirt like a warning. She whispered to herself, almost a prayer. You taught me to disappear. You should have taught me what happens when the forgotten remember. Behind her, Reed watched silently. He knew that tone, the one she used before every mission that mattered. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't duty. It was destiny catching up. How do you kill a ghost when the ghost is part of you? That was the question running through Olivia's mind, as the black van cut through the rain-soaked streets of Prague. Every plan, every movement, every target, she'd learned them from him. And now she had to use them against him. Reed sat across from her, silent, eyes shadowed with the kind of worry only a soldier's husband could understand. Chen checked her weapon quietly, lips pressed tight. The air smelled like gun oil, damp clothes and dread. 2 hours until 0 hour, Chen said softly. Olivia nodded, adjusting her earpiece. Once we breach the Viper Initiative compound, no comms. Assume every frequency is monitored. Reed leaned forward, and if he's really inside, then I end it. The words were steady, cold, rehearsed. But inside something trembled, not fear, something worse, remembrance. They reached the outskirts before dawn. The compound was buried beneath an abandoned industrial park, where the sound of distant freight trains hid the rhythm of armed patrols. Wraith's intel had been flawless. 2 entrances, 1 reinforced gate, 1 drainage tunnel that led under the main structure. Olivia crouched near the tunnel entrance, fingers brushing damp concrete. Reed's voice came softly behind her. You don't have to go first. She looked back at him, a faint smile ghosting across her lips. You taught me better than that. And then she slipped into the dark. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with the metallic scent of rust and time. Their flashlights cut through the tunnel's blackness in thin, trembling beams. Keep tight, she whispered. We've got motion sensors every 20 meters. Chen raised an eyebrow. How do you know? Because I used to install them. They moved in silence, careful steps measured against the hum of unseen machinery above. When they finally emerged inside the facility, the contrast was jarring. Bright white corridors, humming electronics, the sterile heartbeat of something far too alive. Every wall bore the Viper insignia. Every hallway smelled of Ghost Viper's doctrine, order through fear, control through faith. Reed muttered under his breath, "It's like walking through your past." She didn't answer. Her eyes were already scanning for patterns, for traps, for the echoes of a man she'd once trusted with her life. The first body they found wasn't one of theirs. A young recruit, no older than 20, lay slumped against a wall, a bullet through his chest. His weapon was still clutched in his hands. Beside him, a single line scrawled in blood on the wall. "Not all lessons are meant to be learned." Chen swallowed hard. What the hell happened here? Olivia stared at the writing. "He's cleaning house." "Ghost Viper." She nodded. "Someone tried to take his name. Now he's taking it back." They pushed deeper. The corridors grew narrower, the air heavier. Each turn felt rehearsed, as if she were walking through a memory instead of a building. Reed noticed her hesitation. "Talk to me." "He built these places with layers," she said quietly. Each deeper level meant higher clearance, each room a test. The ones who made it to the end, she trailed off. "Didn't come back," Reed finished for her. She nodded. "Exactly." They reached a heavy blast door. The lock mechanism was biometric. Olivia pressed her thumb against the scanner. The light blinked green. "Access granted." Chen stared. "You're still in the system." "No," Olivia said. "Someone wanted me to be." The door opened to reveal a massive chamber. Monitors covered every wall, displaying live feeds of cities across the world: London, Berlin, Moscow, Washington. Each screen showed different recruits training, running drills, firing weapons. Each one bore the Viper emblem. Chen whispered, "They've gone global." Olivia's jaw tightened. They're building what he always dreamed of, an army with no country, no flag. Reed looked at her. "Then we burn it down." Before she could respond, the lights flickered. A voice crackled through the intercom, low, calm, too familiar. "Olivia." The sound froze her in place. "I was wondering how long it would take you." Her pulse quickened, but her voice stayed level. "Where are you?" "Close enough," the voice said, "and far enough to see the look in your eyes right now." Reed motioned toward the control console. Chen started tracing the source, fingers flying over the keyboard. "Stop trying to find me," the voice continued. "You're not here to win, you're here to remember." Olivia clenched her fists. "You killed your own people." A pause, then. "They stopped being mine when they forgot the purpose. You were the only one who ever understood." "I understood enough to leave." "No," he said. "You understood enough to hide. There's a difference." The line went dead. Silence filled the room. Reed's jaw tightened. "We've got his transmission trace, sub-level 3. Olivia checked her weapon. "Then that's where we go." Chen frowned. "We don't even know what's down there." Olivia's eyes darkened. "I do." The elevator ride felt eternal. Each floor they descended, the air grew colder, denser. When the doors opened, a long hallway stretched before them, lined with glass cells. Inside each cell, files, hundreds of them, documenting missions that didn't officially exist. Each labeled with code names, some she recognized, others she'd tried to forget. Then she saw it. File 19, Olivia Mitchell, Behavioral Prototype. Her breath hitched. She opened it. Inside were psychological assessments, neurological scans, transcripts of conversations she didn't remember having. At the bottom, stamped in red: observation. Subject exhibits independence beyond controllable threshold. Recommend isolation. She stared at the words. a tremor breaking through her calm. "They didn't train me," she whispered. "They built me." Reed stepped closer, voice low. "Liv, we can expose this. End it for good." She closed the file slowly. "No, not yet. Not until I look him in the eye." They reached the final chamber, a steel door unmarked. Olivia entered the override code from muscle memory. It slid open with a hiss. The room beyond was small, dim. At its center sat a man, gray hair, lean frame, eyes sharp as ever. "Ghost Viper." He smiled faintly when he saw her. "You finally stopped running." Her grip on the weapon tightened. "You're supposed to be dead." "So are you." He stood slowly, every movement deliberate, like an animal that never lost its rhythm. "I trained you better than any of them," he said softly, "and still you believed the world would let you rest. You trained me to destroy everything I cared about. I trained you to survive what you cared about. There's a difference." He stepped closer. "You think I built the initiative. No, they built themselves. I gave them the idea. You gave them the reason." Olivia's jaw clenched. "I didn't ask to be anyone's reason." He smiled. "That's what makes you perfect." She raised her weapon. "Not anymore." The standoff stretched like eternity. Reed whispered in her earpiece. "Liv, we've got 30 seconds before backup breaches the level. Make your call." Ghost Viper's eyes flicked upward. "They're listening." He took one slow step forward. "Do you really think you can kill me before they kill you?" She didn't answer, because in that moment, she realized something he didn't. He wasn't the same man anymore. And neither was she. The explosion came from above. The shockwave rattled the walls. Emergency lights flared red. Reed's voice shouted through static, "They've found us. Extraction point compromised." Ghost Viper smiled through the chaos. "You still don't see it, do you? You're not here to kill me. You're here to replace me." He pressed a switch on his wrist. A panel on the wall opened, revealing another corridor, dark, endless. Then he was gone. Olivia fired once, twice. Missed both. Chen rushed in, grabbing her arm. "We have to move." She hesitated only a moment before turning and running with them, the alarms blaring like a war drum. They barely made it out before the compound began collapsing behind them. Flames tore through concrete. The air turned to fire. They reached the outer yard, gasping for air as the ground shook. Reed coughed, pulling her close. He planned this. The whole thing was a test. Olivia stared back at the burning structure. Her eyes reflected the fire. "No," she said softly, "it was a lesson." Chen looked at her, confused. "A lesson in what?" Olivia's gaze didn't waver. "In what happens when the past teaches you to become what you swore to destroy." That night after extraction, she sat alone outside the temporary base. Smoke from the destroyed compound still rose faintly in the distance, blending with the stars. Reed came up beside her, sitting without a word. She finally spoke. "He let me go." Reed nodded slowly. "Because he needs you alive. Because he wants me to finish what he started." "And wills you?" She looked at him. The answer was in her silence. He reached over, taking her hand gently. "You're not him, Liv." Her eyes flicked toward the horizon. "Maybe not, but I'm what he made, and now I have to decide what that means." Inside the camp, Chen watched her from the window. She'd seen strong people before, commanders, spies, killers. But Olivia was different. Her strength didn't shout, it whispered. It bent but never broke. And Chen realized something she hadn't before. The real power wasn't in what Olivia could destroy. It was in what she chose to protect. Later that night, Olivia opened her field journal again. She wrote a single line beneath her last entry. "Sometimes the teacher isn't a person. Sometimes it's the silence that follows them." She closed the book, exhaled, and stood. The horizon glowed faintly with the promise of dawn. And for the first time in years, Olivia Mitchell felt something like peace. But deep down, she knew peace never lasted. Not for people like her. Not while the ghost was still out there, building, teaching, watching. How do you explain survival when everyone else dies? That question haunted Olivia long after the smoke cleared. The official reports called it a containment failure, a data center accident. But those who were there, the few who made it out, knew better. The Viper Initiative compound hadn't collapsed by chance. It had been erased. Someone had pushed the button, and someone had chosen who walked away. 48 hours later, Olivia sat inside a debriefing chamber that smelled faintly of metal and burnt coffee. The air conditioning hummed, too cold for comfort. A single light swung overhead, tracing shadows across her face. 3 men in suits sat across from her, their badges gleaming with the emptiness of bureaucratic authority. "Agent Mitchell," one of them said, flipping open a file, "do you deny that you were present at the Prague facility when the explosion occurred?" "No." "Do you deny that you entered without authorization?" "No." "Do you deny that you had prior contact with the individual codenamed Ghost Viper?" Olivia's jaw flexed. "I deny that I initiated it." The man leaned forward. "Then who did?" She met his eyes. "You tell me, you seem to know everything else." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. The man in the center sighed. "Agent Mitchell, you've become a liability. Your image, your record, your past associations. The public sees you as a hero. The agency sees you as a threat." Olivia didn't blink. Then they're finally seeing clearly. The man smirked slightly. "You think you can just walk away from this?" She leaned forward, voice calm but deadly. "I already did." They released her 12 hours later. No charges, no explanations. Just an unmarked vehicle and a warning to stay quiet. Reed was waiting outside, leaning against a rusted truck. His face was tight, unreadable. "They cut you loose," he said. "For now. Jen. She's on probation. They'll try to bury her under paperwork until she forgets what we found." He exhaled, rubbing a hand across his face. "And Ghost Viper?" She shook her head. "Gone, but he left trails, deliberate ones." Reed frowned a bait. "Maybe," she looked up at the gray sky, "or an invitation." They drove for hours through countryside that blurred into nothingness. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy, thick with the things they couldn't yet say. Finally, Reed broke it. "They're painting you as a rogue asset." "I am. I'm serious, Liv. The media's spinning stories. Renegade operative destabilizes European defense network. They're calling you a traitor." She gave a soft, humorless laugh. "First they ignore you, then they mock you, then they need you, then they erase you." He reached over, resting a hand over hers on the gearshift. "I'm not going to let them erase you." She looked at him, really looked, and saw the lines that hadn't been there before. The weight he carried because of her. "You already gave me a life once," she said softly. "Don't lose yours trying to keep me." "Too late for that," he murmured. They found temporary refuge in an abandoned farmhouse near the border. The walls were cracked, the windows broken, but it was quiet. Olivia sat by the fire that night, her journal open across her knees. Her handwriting looked foreign, like someone else had written it years ago. "You can't outrun the ghost if it's inside you." She stared at the sentence until the words blurred. Reed entered quietly, 2 mugs of coffee in his hands. "You're thinking too loud." She took one, smiling faintly. "Old habit. You've had a lot of those lately." "I keep trying to unlearn them, but they were carved too deep." He sat across from her, the firelight dancing in his eyes. "You don't have to unlearn who you are, Liv. You just have to decide who gets to define it." She looked into the flames. "I used to think strength was silence. Now I think it's the courage to speak when the world wants you quiet. Reed reached over, brushing his thumb across her hand. Then speak. She opened her mouth to reply, but the soft crackle of static interrupted her. The radio on the table. Old, dusty, not even plugged in. But it was alive. A distorted voice came through, faint but unmistakable. Mitchell. Her blood turned to ice. Miss me. Reed stood instantly, scanning the room. That's not possible. Olivia stared at the radio. He always made the impossible look easy. Ghost Viper's voice continued, slow and deliberate. You burned my house, Olivia, but you left the foundation. Did you really think the world would thank you for saving it? She didn't answer. This is bigger than you, bigger than me. You can't stop what's already begun. Then the line went dead. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Reed finally whispered, "How did he find us?" Olivia closed her eyes. He didn't. He wanted us to hear that. He's drawing lines, trying to force a choice. What kind of choice? She looked up at him, her voice distant. Between loyalty and truth. By morning, Chen had reappeared. She tracked them down using an encrypted network Wraith helped maintain off-grid. Her eyes were sunken, her voice dry from exhaustion. They're cleaning the entire file, she said. Everything about Viper Initiative, Ghost Viper, even your boot camp record. By next week, it'll be like none of it ever happened. Reed muttered, "They're rewriting history." No, Olivia said, "they're repeating it." Chen glanced at her. You have a plan, don't you? I always do. That afternoon, she opened her old field case, the one she'd sworn never to touch again. Inside were photos, coordinates, a folded patch bearing the Viper insignia. Everything he built was designed to survive without him, she said. Cells that rebuild themselves, doctrines that self-propagate. If we want to end it, we can't chase him. We have to erase the belief. Chen frowned. You mean go public? Reed's head snapped up. Live, that's suicide. It's truth. Truth gets you killed. She met his eyes. Then maybe it's time someone died for it. They contacted Wraith again through an encrypted link. The hacker's voice carried a mix of admiration and fear. You're planning to expose the Viper network? Yes. Do you realize how many governments have a stake in that program? All of them. There was a pause, then I'll help you. Olivia looked at Reed. Once this goes live, there's no going back. He nodded. We haven't gone back in years. The upload began at midnight. Thousands of classified documents, hidden recordings, training videos, psychological reports, all of it streaming into the public domain through anonymous servers. For 3 hours, the world's digital infrastructure trembled. Governments scrambled to contain it, agencies went silent, and headlines began flooding the networks. Global Black OPS program exposed. Ghost Viper project linked to multinational intelligence. Agent Olivia, MITCHELL named in leak. Reed watched the chaos unfold on a flickering laptop screen. It's out. They can't bury it now. Olivia didn't smile. They'll try. Chen exhaled shakily. You just set the world on fire. Olivia turned away. Sometimes that's the only way to see who's still standing. By dawn, the farmhouse was surrounded. Black SUVs, unmarked uniforms, the low hum of drones overhead. Reed cursed softly. They moved fast. They were always watching, Olivia said calmly. She grabbed her weapon, checked the chamber, then looked at him. You have to go. He shook his head. Not happening. Tom, I'm not leaving you again. Chen cut in, voice tense. We don't have time for this. They're breaching in 60 seconds. Olivia's gaze locked on Reed's. Then help me make sure it means something. The first explosion tore through the side wall. Smoke and glass rained down. the air filled with the roar of rotors and shouted commands. Reed returned fire, covering Chen as she uploaded the last data stream through Wraith's relay. 30 more seconds, Chen yelled. Olivia took position by the window, firing precise bursts into the advancing perimeter. Hold the line. Reed reloaded. They're not here to capture, they're here to erase. Then we don't let them. When the dust finally settled, the farmhouse was gone. What remained were ashes and silence. The world believed Olivia Mitchell had died that night. The official report listed her as KIA during domestic counter-operation. The story faded within weeks. But stories like hers never stay buried. Months later, somewhere along the edges of a border that no longer mattered, a woman walked alone through the mist. Her hair was shorter now, her posture different. Her eyes, however, were the same. She carried a small device in her hand, a simple radio transmitter, old and scratched. She turned it on. Static. Then a voice. Faint, familiar. Ghost Viper is dead. Another pause. But the lesson continues. Olivia smiled faintly. Not anymore. She dropped the transmitter into the river, watched it sink beneath the current. The reflection that looked back at her wasn't the same soldier who'd once stood at boot camp, mocked and underestimated. It was something steadier, quieter, stronger. For the first time in years, she wasn't following anyone's orders. Not his, not theirs, not even her own ghosts. She walked until the fog swallowed her whole. Somewhere behind her, the world still argued about truth and betrayal, about heroes and enemies. But she was done trying to fit into anyone's definition of either. Because the truth was simpler. Sometimes the only war worth fighting was the one that ended inside you. And sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Why did the world remember her only after she was gone? That was the irony. In life, Olivia Mitchell had been doubted, mocked, contained. In death, she became a symbol. Headlines called her the fallen whistleblower, the rogue angel, the last honest soldier. Politicians spoke her name with rehearsed sorrow. Every news channel turned her story into theater, a neat ending for a narrative they never understood. But endings were never her style. Because while the world mourned the myth, the woman herself was very much alive. The forest at the edge of the Baltic coast was her new home. A small cabin, a radio tower, the ocean close enough to smell the salt on the wind. No neighbors, no traces. Every morning she woke before dawn, brewed black coffee and listened. Static, signals, bursts of coded transmissions bouncing between frequencies. Somewhere out there, the remnants of the Viper initiative still whispered. And she listened to every word. She spent 6 months building a new identity, Anna Kovacs, freelance logistics officer for a humanitarian network. Her papers were flawless, her accent untraceable. But under the surface, the mission never stopped. Every shipment she arranged, every name she scanned, every encrypted message she intercepted, all led back to the same conclusion. Ghost Viper was still alive. And worse, his ideology was spreading again, not through guns or soldiers, but through influence. Videos, messages, quiet propaganda. His words recycled by voices that didn't even know who he was. He'd become an idea. And ideas don't die with their creators. One cold morning, as the sea mist rolled in thick and pale, Olivia heard something she hadn't in months, 3 sharp clicks through her receiver. A code from long ago. One she'd sworn never to use again. She froze, then adjusted the dial. The voice that came through was faint, female and urgent. Olivia, if you're out there, it's Chen. They're rebuilding. Different name this time, Horizon Directive. They're recruiting under humanitarian fronts. Static swallowed the rest. Olivia gripped the receiver, her pulse steady but fierce. So Chen had survived. And the game wasn't over. That night, she pulled a battered field case from beneath the floorboards. Inside lay her old service patch, her sidearm, and the folded flag Reed had left her with the last time she saw him. She ran a finger over the fabric. "You told me not to come back," she whispered, "but you also said to finish what we start." Outside, the wind howled across the cliffs. She zipped her jacket, slung her pack over her shoulder, and walked into the dark. The trail led her to Warsaw again, a city rebuilt over its own ruins. The Horizon Directive operated under a clean name, the Atlas Foundation for Defense Research. But Olivia saw the cracks immediately. The same patterns, the same cold efficiency in the guards' movements. And on one of the digital flyers posted on a street kiosk, a phrase she hadn't seen in years. "Discipline is freedom." Her chest tightened. That was Ghost Viper's line. He was out there, watching, testing. She made contact with Chen 2 nights later, in the back room of an abandoned train station. The reunion was brief, silent, full of understanding words didn't need. Chen looked older, harder, but her eyes still held that spark of loyalty Olivia remembered. "They think you're dead," Chen said. "You should have stayed that way." "Would have been easier," Olivia replied, "but you called me." Chen hesitated. "Because I couldn't stop it. Horizon isn't just rebuilding, they've infiltrated civilian infrastructure, communications, relief networks, even educational systems." Olivia frowned. "They're going after minds." Chen nodded. "They're creating loyalty before people even wear a uniform." Olivia exhaled slowly. "Then we take out the head before it grows teeth." The operation was clean, clinical. They built a team of 4, Chen, 2 ex-agents turned mercenaries, and Olivia under her Anna Kovacs identity. Their first target, a Horizon data hub hidden beneath a corporate research facility. The entry was surgical, keycard clone, elevator override, silent breach. Inside, rows of servers hummed like an artificial heartbeat. Chen began the download, while Olivia covered the entrance. 2 minutes, Chen whispered. But as the last file transferred, the monitors flashed. The entire room filled with a single image, Ghost Viper's insignia. Then his voice, calm and familiar, echoed through the speakers. "Still chasing ghosts, Olivia." She froze. Even through the distortion, it was him. "You think I didn't plan for this," the voice continued. "I taught you to think 3 steps ahead, so tell me, why are you standing exactly where I want you to be?" The lights went red. The doors locked. Chen cursed. "He's triggering the failsafe." "Run the bypass," Olivia barked. "Can't, it's manual." Olivia holstered her weapon and sprinted to the console, ripping out wires, cutting power. The alarm stopped, the lights died. Only silence remained. Chen stared at her. "You just wiped the entire system." Olivia's voice was steady. "Better ashes than chains." They escaped into the night, sirens wailing behind them. When they reached the outskirts, Olivia finally allowed herself to breathe. But deep down, she knew Ghost Viper wasn't dead. He'd let her live again. Just like before. 2 weeks later, she tracked the next signal to a coastal facility in Norway, a cold place built from concrete and lies. Intel suggested the Horizon Directive was preparing a new prototype training system, digital, immersive, powered by the data they'd stolen from Ghost Viper's archives. She infiltrated it alone. No comms, no backup. The deeper she went, the more familiar it became. The targets, the corridors, the voice guiding the recruits through their drills. A recorded voice. His voice. She stepped into the central command room, and there it was. A holographic figure of Ghost Viper himself, reconstructed from recordings, standing tall in front of the recruits. A simulation. A myth made real. Her stomach twisted. They hadn't revived the man. They digitized the monster. Freeze. She turned. A soldier stood in the doorway, weapon raised, young, nervous, barely out of training. Olivia raised her hand slowly. You don't have to do this. The soldier's grip shook. You're Mitchell. She blinked. How do you know that name? They told us stories, the girl said, about the one who betrayed the cause. Betrayed? Olivia stepped closer. No, I survived it. The girl's weapon trembled. He said you'd say that. Then he lied to both of us. A long silence. Then finally the girl lowered the gun. Go, she whispered, before they see you. Olivia hesitated. What's your name? Lyra. Olivia nodded once. If you want out, find Chen in Warsaw. Tell her I sent you. The girl nodded back, fear and courage warring in her eyes. And for a moment, Olivia saw herself, years ago, standing in that same storm of doubt. She planted the charges and walked out just as the alarms began. Behind her, the holographic ghost flickered once, twice, and vanished into the fire. The recruits scattered. The myth burned. For the first time, the name Viper meant nothing. Later, under the cover of the Northern Lights, she and Chen regrouped. They sat on the hood of a truck, breath fogging in the freezing air. Chen handed her a flask. One more fire you walk away from. Olivia took a sip. Feels different this time. How? It wasn't revenge, it was release. Chen smiled faintly. You think it's over. Olivia looked out at the horizon, endless snow and shadow. Not yet, but we're closer. Chen frowned. To what? To peace. That night, as she watched the aurora paint the sky in silence, she opened her journal again. The pages were worn, the ink faded, but one line stood out. Sometimes the world doesn't need another soldier. It needs someone who remembers why soldiers break. She closed the book and whispered to herself, Ghost Viper built weapons. I'll build witnesses. Because the truth wasn't about killing the man anymore. It was about unmaking what he'd made. Turning silence into story. Turning fear into light. When dawn came, she and Chen packed up to leave. The road ahead was long, winding, full of ghosts. But Olivia Mitchell walked lighter than she had in years. No ranks. No titles. No orders. Just purpose, quiet, steady, unshakable. And far behind them, buried under snow and flame, the legend of Ghost Viper finally began to fade. But somewhere in the shadows of another city, a monitor flickered. An anonymous hand typed a single command. Initiate Serpent Protocol, Phase 2. The screen glowed red. A voice whispered through the static. Mitchell thinks she ended it. She just opened the next door. Why did the silence feel heavier than war? Maybe because this silence wasn't peace. It was the sound of everything she'd ever believed collapsing quietly inside her. Weeks had passed since Norway. The explosions, the snow, the ghosts. Chen had gone dark to rebuild their network. Reed was still missing, somewhere between rumors and shadows. And Olivia Mitchell was tired. Not the kind of tired you fix with sleep. The kind that lives in your bones. The kind that comes when every battle starts to feel like the same one. She moved through the ruins of Europe under false names and colder skis, following the faint digital scent of Serpent Protocol. Every lead ended in the same dead pattern: shell companies, fake research labs, funding trails that circled back to the very agencies that once employed her. Ghost Viper's shadow was everywhere, even in death. But this time, she wasn't chasing him. She was tracing herself, the echo of who she'd been trained to be. Because if Serpent was truly his legacy, then she was part of it too. The trail finally led her to the outskirts of Bucharest. A compound disguised as a humanitarian distribution center. But she recognized the security formation, the coded lights, the silent sentries. Viper's doctrine lived here, but something about it felt different. There was music playing inside, soft, classical, and laughter, children's laughter. She hesitated, then entered. Inside there were no weapons, no soldiers, just classrooms, and children learning from holographic screens, languages, tactics, logistics. Training without calling it training. The ideology had evolved. A woman approached her, clipboard in hand, calm smile. "Welcome," she said in perfect English. "Are you here to volunteer?" Olivia's throat tightened. "I used to be part of this." The woman tilted her head. "Part of what?" "Something that looked like this, but it wasn't for kids." The woman smiled sadly. "It never is, not at first." Olivia looked around again. "Who funds this place?" The woman shrugged lightly. "Different donors, we don't ask names, we just build futures." Olivia's voice softened. "And what happens when those futures are trained to obey?" The woman's eyes flickered. "Then maybe they'll obey something better than fear." That night Olivia stayed nearby, watching from a distance. The laughter, the lights, the same methods that had once built killers now shaping orphans. For the first time in years, she wasn't sure if what she was seeing was wrong or right. Ghost Viper's teachings had become diluted, repackaged, sanitized. But the structure, the system, was still there. And she knew how dangerous systems could be, no matter how noble their faces. She whispered into the dark, "You can't fix rot by painting over it." A few days later she found him. Not Ghost Viper, he was long gone. But someone who had taken his place. An older man in a gray coat, standing near the edge of the compound, watching the children through glass walls. He looked like a teacher, not a soldier. "You've been following me," he said without turning. "I've been following what's left of him," she replied. He smiled faintly. "You think I'm his heir. I think you're his echo." He turned then and she froze. The resemblance was uncanny, not in face but in presence. The same calm authority, the same quiet danger wrapped in gentleness. Ghost Viper's methods weren't evil, he said. They were incomplete. He believed strength was born from obedience. I believe it's born from purpose. Purpose without empathy becomes tyranny, Olivia said quietly. And empathy without purpose becomes chaos, he countered. You of all people should understand balance. She stared at him. You're building an army of believers. He shook his head. I'm building a generation of survivors. And what happens when you tell them who to survive against? That stopped him. For a moment, even he looked uncertain. Olivia took a step closer. You can call it horizon, serpent, hope, whatever you want, but it all ends the same way with someone like me. His eyes softened. You're still fighting ghosts. She nodded. And maybe this is the only way to keep them from coming back. Later, when she left, the rain began to fall. She walked for miles through the city streets, her boots echoing in puddles. Every face she passed reminded her of someone she couldn't save. Ghost Viper had built soldiers. This man was building successors. And she was caught between them, the weapon that refused to be used. By nightfall, she reached a quiet chapel on the edge of town, small, broken, abandoned. The kind of place ghosts would kneel if they had anywhere left to go. She lit a candle, even though she didn't believe in God. She believed in something else, something quieter. The act of stopping, of breathing, of remembering who she'd once been before the world told her who she had to be. She thought of the girl in Norway, Lyra. Of Chen, still running in the dark. Of Reed, whose voice still lingered like warmth in the cold. And she thought of the commander at boot camp, the first man to salute her, the first to see past silence. So much had changed since then. So little had stayed. She whispered into the empty air. Maybe strength isn't what survives the fire. Maybe it's what walks back into it on purpose. Her calm device crackled. A faint voice, Chen's. Liv, are you hearing this? Static then. They've gone public. Serpent just announced itself as an international training initiative, sanctioned by multiple governments. Olivia closed her eyes. They've legitimized it. Chen's voice wavered. We can't fight that, it's too big. Yes, Olivia said softly, but we can expose it. And that's when she made the final decision. Not to destroy Serpent. Not to erase Ghost Viper's name. But to step out of the shadows. Completely. A week later, the world watched a live broadcast unlike any other. An anonymous signal hijacked major news channels, streaming from an unknown location. A single woman appeared on screen, no uniform, no insignia, no title. Her face was calm, her voice steady. My name, she began, was Olivia Mitchell. Across the world, millions stopped to listen. I was trained to be invisible, to obey, to survive. And for years, I believed that silence was loyalty. But silence only feeds monsters. She paused. The room behind her was dark, untraceable. They'll call me a traitor. They'll call this a crime. But I'm not here to fight them. I'm here to remind you that truth doesn't need permission. She uploaded the files live on air, everything Ghost Viper had built, everything Serpent had become. Names, contracts, footage, the rot beneath the uniforms. Her voice grew quieter as she spoke. I'm not a hero, I'm not a soldier. I'm just someone who finally stopped mistaking obedience for honor. A long silence followed. Then softly, if you remember anything about me, don't remember the tattoo. Don't remember the headlines. Remember this, sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. The broadcast cut out. Within hours, the world fractured. Governments denied involvement. Some called her a martyr. Others called her a myth. But one thing became undeniable: the truth had been seen. And once seen, it couldn't be unseen. Weeks later, Chen received a message through a secure channel. No name, just coordinates. When she arrived, it was a small cemetery on the edge of a coastal town. There was no grave marked Olivia Mitchell. Just a plain stone that read, "Silence is not peace." Chen smiled through tears. You never could stay dead, could you? The wind carried faint laughter through the trees, or maybe just memory. Far away in a small fishing village by the sea, a woman walked the docks at dawn. Her hair shorter now, streaked with gray. Her step steady, her shoulders unburdened. She carried no weapons, no gear, no ghosts. Only a single notebook. She sat by the water, opened it and wrote. I thought my war was against him. But it was always against becoming him. She looked up, watching the horizon shift from black to gold. Maybe this was what peace looked like, not silence, not surrender, but choice. The choice to stop fighting ghosts and start living among the living. As the sun rose, she closed the notebook and stood. The waves crashed against the pier, scattering spray across her boots. For a brief moment she smiled, small, tired, real. And somewhere far beyond sight, maybe in memory, maybe in eternity, Ghost Viper's shadow finally dissolved. Because he'd built soldiers to obey. But she had become something far more dangerous. A soldier who chose. And that was her victory. No explosions. No medals. No sound. Just quiet resolve. A name the world might never speak again. And a lesson whispered into history. That strength isn't loud, it isn't cruel, it isn't unbreakable. It's human.